Welcome to the second episode of our new monthly podcast series, Venue Security, the IAVM podcast series. This new series is a collaboration between Gate 15 and the International Association of Venue Managers, or IAVM, and specifically the Venue Safety and Security Committee. And it's a new monthly podcast available right here in the Gate 15 podcast channel, along with our other podcasts that you know and I hope love, including our weekly security sprint, the Nerd Out with Dave Pounder, and my monthly Gate 15 interview. But before we dive in, I just want to extend a thank you to our colleagues at CISA and the commercial utilities sector who shared our inaugural episode in their monthly newsletter last month. Thank you very much, CISA. We appreciate your partnership and your support to try and educate the community on the great things happening in venue security. So we had a great kickoff in January, and this month I'm very happy to welcome Gil Fried, professor and assistant dean of the College of Business at the University of West Florida and a member of the International Association of Venue Managers Venue Safety and Security Committee. Gil, thanks for being here. Thanks for adjusting. There's a little bit of confusion on my end, so thanks for being flexible. You want to tell us just a little bit about yourself?
Sure, thank you, Annie, and it's a pleasure to be here. And I want to give a shout out to Gate 15 and all the different parties involved, IAVM, and there's a lot of good folks out there. And I don't want to say you're scraping the bottom of the barrel to get me, kind of thing, but I'm glad to be here.
No, you're guest too. We're not scraping. You're guest too.
All right, so I'll take that as a very good positive. I've been in this space for way too long. So what happened was back in the 80s, I was the head badminton coach at Stanford University, and Rick Bay, the athletic director at Ohio State, wanted me to come there and to coach there. And he offered me the opportunity to get my law degree, my master's in sport management at the same time while I was coaching. So I went there, and I was the first, I think the second one in America to get a specialized degree in both areas. And that was about 1990. I went back to California a little bit afterwards and was practicing law. And I focused on sport law with an emphasis on venues. And so I was representing a wide variety of different venues. And then in about 1994, somewhere around there, the state of Wisconsin was dealing with the Camp Randall stampede issues. And Camp Randall involved is their stadium, and they had a game against Michigan for who was going to go to the Rose Bowl, and ended up being a swarm onto the field. 77 people got trampled and had to be taken to the hospital. 11 of them were resuscitated, and there were a slew of lawsuits. And they came and asked me if I'd be the expert witness for them. I had never done that before. It wasn't my area of expertise, but because I had written about sport venues and I was representing them and I was involved in that space, I got involved, and it just took off from there. In 1995, I left the practice of law to go back into academia, not as a coach this time, but as a professor. And ever since then, I've been involved with like the IAVM with their train the crowd manager, train the trainer program, which was about 1996, 97. All that time I've been involved with the IAVM since then, and great organization, love it. It was the IAAM back then, and I was involved in the committee to change the name, and I've been on tons of different committees over the years, and it's a great group of some wonderful people. And so I teach. I'm a full-time professor. I taught for 22 years at the University of New Haven, and I led their program. And then for the last 3 years, I've been here at the University of West Florida. I do a lot of different things in the space besides teaching sport facility management and sport risk management. I have a textbook out there called Managing Sport Facilities, which is used at about 180, 190 college campuses, and that has been put into, I think we're on the 5th edition now, and has been translated into Chinese, Russian, Hungarian, Spanish, Korean, all these languages all over the world. And I also put out a newsletter called Sports Facilities in the Law. That's from Hackney Publications. We have about 1,000 subscribers. It's free. You can't beat the cost. And that's put out every 2 months. And we have a very good board of advisors, and that includes a lot of people in our venue management space. And I also put out YouTube videos called The Crowd Management Doctor, and they're free videos, all designed to educate people as well. So needless to say, I don't sleep at night. I, because my big thing after all of that is that I'm a well-known expert witness, and that's probably what I'm most known for, is that I've handled in the last 30 years some of the biggest crime management cases, whether it is the Stowe case with the LA Dodgers, whether it's the shootings at the Aurora Theater, stampede at Walmart on a Black Friday sale, concert cases, sports cases, stadium cases involving escalators that have collapsed. You name it, I've done it. And that's why I'm often called Dr. Doom and Gloom, because I handle stuff people don't want to touch, which is death, paraplegia, quadriplegia, all the bad stuff.
It is. I mean, Gil, you've got an incredible amount of experience and a lot of ways to connect with you. The videos on your YouTube are great. You know, they're short and to the point, really enjoyable. The textbook is a fantastic resource for the community, and in fact, it's been translated so many languages, even more accessible because we see many of those types of issues you just discussed, unfortunately, happening all around the world. Right? There's a need for venue professionals, crowd control experts, crowd management experts all around the world. So let's dig into this a little bit. So thank you for the background. Thank you for all that you've done and contribute to the community every day. You're doing a lot, but we're going to look at a few things today briefly here, just to give folks an idea of some of the things they might want to be thinking about. One of the areas that venue managers have said through IAVM and through some surveying that's been done, they said they want to hear more about is how to effectively train and supervise venue security staff. So let's just take a few minutes to discuss both of those and to hear your perspective. You've been closely involved in this community for many years, as you've articulated in your great background. So to start, let's take it in two parts here. Talk to me about effective training. How do we train and develop security personnel? And how do we have to think about that in relation to full-time staff, part-time staff, and then we got contracted personnel? It's not one size fits all. So how do we manage training for venue security personnel?
So let me actually, in that answer, combine both of them.
Okay.
So first and foremost, everyone has to be trained, and you have to provide enough appropriate training to make sure they have the skills necessary to execute their job. I'm notorious on the record that I think a lot of the training that is undertaken right now is woefully inadequate. One training session a year at the start of a season. I have the Israeli military experience and background and mentality, and it's same with any other military person, which is you train, you train, you train. It's like Malcolm Gladwell in his book, The 10,000 Hour Analysis, and that's been debunked by a lot of people. But what it shows is that you can't become an expert in knowing how to execute something if you don't practice it to the point where it's muscle memory. So as someone who is trained as an athlete, you train and you train, but it has to be perfect training. Because if you do improper training, you're going to learn bad habits, and it's not going to be able to be effective for you when you have to execute when time is of the essence. And that's what we think about when we're looking at crowd management. Is it's normally time is of the essence.
Yeah.
You don't have the time when it's a medical emergency, when it's a fire emergency, whatever the emergency is, to go and say, I got to look this up and figure out what I'm going to do. It should be ingrained in you. And the only way to do that is constant and vigilant training. So what does that mean? It means a variety of different things. One is it has to be appropriate for the right audience. I gave a presentation to the Stadium Manager Association meeting, I think a year or two ago, and I gave a whole presentation. And if your listeners want it, I'm happy to share the PowerPoint with them. And it examined all the different types of learning styles. And so you mentioned like the videos that we put out that are short and sweet and designed to be about 20 minutes. Because that's about the attention span for many Gen Zs and Gen X people. They want to see visual. They want little sound bites. They want it easy to digest.
Yeah.
Versus people that are maybe seniors who might be working on a staff on a part-time basis, secondary job, or they're retirees and they're being brought in for crowd management or just ushering or whatever it might be. They learn a completely different way.
Yeah.
If you have a one-size-fits-all delivery, you're going to be losing people right away. So you have to understand who your audience is. And it's not unusual for current corporate trainers to ask, what is your style? Are you a visual learner? Are you an auditory learner? Are you a hands-on learner? And figuring out what it is that's going to be the best opportunity to engage someone in the educational process. because it's not like one man on a mountain saying, listen to me, I am a genius. It is, how can I get you engaged that you want to internalize this and constantly refresh that in different ways. So as an example, tabletop exercises are great. Most of our entities that undergo tabletop exercises do it with the top brass. And they hope that that cascades down the mountain to everybody else. Does it? Most of the time it doesn't. So it's engaging the people and inviting them to participate and get involved so they understand what it is and the importance of it and why we do it. And so there's no one size fits all approach to training. And I think entities that try that, it might be cheaper and more economical, but it's not going to meet the end result. So it might be that venues have to require in their contracts with providers of different securities. So if it's outsourced or if it's internally to their own employees, what they want. And what I like to see very clear, I like to see a curriculum. I like to see PowerPoint presentations that aren't, I've seen slide decks that are over 150 slides.
Right.
No, it ain't going to work. I like to see an exam to test that people in fact get it. And then I like to see evidence of refresher. And that's why, like with the videos that we put out, one is they're all free. And we do that for the basic reason we're a university. We're trying to educate people. But it's not just the 17 modules we developed. We every month or two, we come up with new things, whether it's a case study, whether it's an interview with someone in the industry, whether it is an encapsulation in the last month or two of headlines. Because when they keep listening, keep it pounding on the people in a way that they can hear about it and they're like, oh, I didn't know about that. You're going to get them more engaged in the process. More engaged, they're going to be doing a better job.
Yeah, when I hear you say, I mean, I'm hearing, we need somewhat continuous learning. We need to be somewhat customized to the audience, right? Let's get the right way to the right person, right? And it's important. And you had a really good point with the workshops and tabletops. We do a lot of those. And you're right. I mean, if we're doing a tabletop with, an executive team, that's not at all the same exercise we would do with the operators, that are responsible for that same concern, same threat, same issue, same plan, but it's different roles, different responsibilities, different decision-making process. And you're absolutely right. None of that can be one size fits all. And that's where you've got some organizations that want to check the block in training and an exercise, and some that want to do it right. And certainly, we want to encourage folks to spend a little bit of extra time and resources, whether that's your time or outsource, whatever it is, but do it right. Do it so that it can be well received and we can all learn and grow from it. So Gil, I'm sure we could spend, you're a professor, I could spend hours and hours talking on these topics, but let's focus on supervision. Let's pivot a little bit to supervision. So, continuing the idea of training personnel, thinking about supervising personnel, including those same types of security personnel, right? The different groups that we have, but how do we effectively supervise staff, and how does that change? How does supervision change with different types and sized venues, right? So whether I'm a stadium or arena or a convention center, does it change for me then? And if I'm a 10,000 person facility or a 500 person facility, does it change for me then? How does that supervision role change with those different considerations?
I don't think it should, in all honesty. And I'm a man who speaks his conviction of what I think. I think the supervisorial role that we see in crowd management, risk management, safety in general, is often very weak. And it's not a reflection of the individuals. It's empowering the supervisors and putting it as part of their role, what they have to do. As an example, you have a number of venues where they allow shadowing, or they encourage shadowing, or they mandate shadowing. That's a great way to inculcate someone into the policies and procedures of a venue, and it's critical to do that. But what I often don't see is where's the follow-up after that? So, okay, they've shadowed someone, and now you've put them in and you have them on the dot map and you've deployed them in the right areas, and you might redeploy them and all that kind of stuff, which we see in our industry. Does a manager actually go and monitor what they're doing? I have seen some teams that have done a great job, where I've seen it in the litigation where we get the employee, all the records of various employees that were in a given section. And I can go through there and see, oh, look at, they have a supervisor that went through and every month They said, okay, they were in attention. They weren't looking at the game. I mean, it's basically a checklist that they have that and they have that available so they can go back to the person and say, look at, you're doing your job great. Keep it up. You're doing a wonderful job. Because a lot of the people are doing wonderful jobs out there. And we should recognize that and we should reward that. But if someone is not doing their job well, we also have to recognize that. And I've handled way too many cases where we've brought somebody in because we were short on staff and we're trying to just fill roles, and had situations where someone on their first day of the job got upset and punched a fan in the face.
Man, yeah.
That doesn't look good at all for us as an industry. And so a supervisor has a lot of different roles. One is to do the hiring, and that's much more difficult these days after COVID and our ability to actually fill roles. But when you're doing that hiring process, I had a case where someone was hired and they put down their mother and a Grand Duke of the KKK as their references. References were never contacted. And this person assaulted somebody who was of a certain race that, the person hated because they were racist. And, the entity got skewered during the legal process because they had a process of screening and they just didn't do it. So you want to vet the people. That's a really critical role for a supervisor. And then after you bring them onboard them in an appropriate way, make sure they understand what's going on, make sure they have a mentor, make sure they can talk to other people, but make sure you evaluate them on a regular basis. And that's going to protect you as an entity. If you could show, we evaluate them 3 times a season, 4 times a season, whatever it is, that's going to be something that if you keep that, and I'm your expert witness that's defending you, I'm going to be dancing like you wouldn't believe, because I have some information that will protect me. And that's what I look for in these cases. I look for, how did you hire them? How did you train them? How did you supervise them? Do you terminate people that have engaged in inappropriate conduct? We just had about 2 months ago a legal decision, a verdict in Los Angeles, unfortunately against the Dodgers. I can't say a lot about it because I was an expert witness in the case, but it was the first time we've seen punitive damages awarded against a security person at a stadium. That should all make us sit back, that a jury can look at the actions and possibly say, that is so wrong that it's unconscionable and we have to award punitive damages to punish.
Yeah, absolutely. That should be a red flag to folks that are listening. And you had a number of really good points in there, Gil. I think one, the idea of, say what you're going to do and then do what you said you're going to do, right? So articulate what your plans and policies are, your accountability, your vetting processes, like have those written down and documented, but then you got to do those things as you said you're going to do them, right? And then you had another really good point that I really appreciated. And I'm sure your days back in the Israeli military, mine back in the U.S. Army, spot rewards and spot corrections go a long way, right? You can't let those things that don't look right go without correcting them on the spot. In an environment like that, make that correction so they know what's expected. And the spot rewards are so valuable, right? People like to be recognized for doing the right thing, and oftentimes we overlook that, right? We just take it for granted, and being able to pause and recognize that, hey, Susie did a great job today, right? Billy did a great job today. Like that goes a long way in making people feel valued and appreciated. So I think there's really a lot of good in what you've already shared with us, Gil. And again, I'd love to dig into this a lot more. I know you've got a lot of great perspective, but I'm going to keep moving this along because the format we follow here. So you already started going down this path a little bit. So I'm not going to have to go into as much as maybe initially thought, but you mentioned your very widely used textbook, and you talked about your YouTube channel and the newsletter, which provide a lot of great resources for the community, and a lot of those are free and available. So just for somebody that's listening and thinking, man, I'd like to check that out a little bit. How does one find you on YouTube, and how does one subscribe to your newsletter? Where do they go? What are they looking for?
Okay, so hopefully I'm not on any bad internet channels. I'm not on any of those adult sites. I'm just on YouTube under Crowd Management Doctor. You can also look under my name, Gil Fried. You probably will see videos of me playing badminton or stuff like that from the good old ages. But I'm happy to share that with anybody if they have a hard time finding it. And the newsletter is Sports Facilities and the Law. It's pretty easy, sportsfacilitieslaw.com. and it's free. We have about 1,000 subscribers, and so it's people that work on the front lines, and it gives them legal stories and legal cases written by attorneys. They're not just by me; it's by other people in the field as well. And we've been putting it out for 7 years now, and it's free. And luckily, we have a number of insurance companies and law firms, and even one crowd management company that are sponsors of it, just to get the word out, because we want to educate people. And then I want to put it out there, like I try to do on a regular basis, that when people ask, hey, can you give a presentation? Can you talk to our employees? I'm happy to do that. My goal is to make people as safe as possible, and whatever that is, that's part of my educational calling. And for the YouTube videos, we're going to be launching later this month a quiz option that gives people the right to get a certificate. And so if people out there in the space say, hey, look, I want to train 1,000 people, we can have them watch the videos for free, and we're going to be charging $5 to do the testing, the certificate, and it's all online. And then they have a third party that can now verify that the person got at least 80% right on a 30 quiz after they've watched the videos. And
Oh,
so we're trying to provide that as a low cost option.
yeah.
As I said before, it does have the ability that you can now get all those little refresher videos that we put out throughout the year. And that's something that you can just ask your employees, okay, while you're waiting for the game to start, or for people to come into the gates, just watch this for 15 minutes. It's a short, quick video. And hopefully that will resonate with people. And that's part of the continuous learning.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, one, we'll share the links for the crowd management doctor and the newsletter that folks can sign up for with the show notes. I love the very low cost, testing and certification process. That's just another great way to ensure that people are getting training, they understand what they were trained upon, right? And there's always got to be some cost for these things, right? It costs money to execute them, but that's such a reasonable price, right? To get people, trained and familiarized with some things they need to know for their jobs and their profession. So that goes right down. I was going to follow up, and you kind of answered already, but maybe there's more to it. That's one way, right? The training and certification, that it can be used to inform leaders and support effectively training and developing security personnel. But with your videos and with the newsletter, are those resources that can be used to help train staff and educate staff as they go through their professional development?
Definitely. My idea of development is try to spread the net as wide as possible. There are so many sources outside of the sport realm, outside of the arts realm, outside of the music realm, and oftentimes we fit into our silos and we don't think broader. You can learn so much from looking at so many different things. School safety, as an example, and picking up material from what is used there. There are publications out there dealing with septed, with all these different elements that are out there. And the more you educate yourself, the more you can become an advocate for educating all those that are working within your organization. And that's what I encourage people, is to have that broad net. You can learn from science, from psychology, from all these different areas, and it makes you a better person, but it also makes you a better leader of others, because you have a broader frame of reference to utilize with people. So I'm definitely not saying there's a one-stop shop that our training, that should be it. No, it should be in conjunction with what you know about your venue. Every venue is unique. Every territory, every county, every state, city, you have your own unique issues that you have to be able to address and understand and communicate that. I want to encourage people to have as much open communication with their employees. That's another thing from the Israeli army, that if you are a lower level grunt, you can challenge a supervisor at any time if you think something is wrong and harmful or incorrect. You should have that kind of atmosphere and environment within every organization. Should not be scared to raise an issue that's related to safety to other people for fear of retaliation. And that becomes part of having the mindset of this, we're a team. We're not just an individual, we're a team, and we have to address this together as a team, because you're only as strong as your weakest link. And if you have employees that are scared or don't want to do something because of fear, you have to be able to nip that in the bud and figure that out and resolve that problem. So
Yes.
that's what I think about.
So important in security, Gil, and so important in a healthy culture all around, to allow people to ask questions, express themselves without fear of reprisal and retribution. You've given us a lot of arrows to throw into our quiver here, and I appreciate that. And so let's hear one more thing here as we close out each of these IAVM podcasts. Gil, I think it's great just to hear what it is that is on the mind of leaders in this industry. So here we are, you and I are sitting here, February 2024. What are the one or two things on your mind venue leaders and security leaders may want to hear or think about as they walk away?
So one is an unfortunate area, and that is the fans are acting in a way that it's hard to say it without offending people, but sometimes they're acting like wild animals. Mm-hmm. And we're seeing it with parents at Little League games and fights. We've seen it with over 40 high school football games had issues associated with gun violence this past season. You have it at major concerts where people are just scaling fences that it's like they have really no meaning anymore. So I see that as a concern that we have to figure out how we're going to deal with this. I mean, are we going to stop day-long events after a certain point, kick everybody out and try bringing them back in and arresting people? How are we going to address that? And then I think part of that is understanding the law and possibly working with our elected officials to make more stringent laws out there. If you throw your phone at an artist and it hits them, well, should that be an enhanced penalty? If you assault an official, a referee, an athlete, coach, whatever it is, should you have enhanced penalties? If you go to a venue and you're not a paying customer, can we create a ban list? And maybe we need legislation to allow us to do that, where it says, hey, look, you got busted for going to this facility without money, without paying, and you're now banned from going to any other venue like this in the United States. We have to, in some way, send a message, and it might sound like cruel, but in the same vein, this is causing problems and causing injuries and causing harm and destruction. And it's in that it's impossible for us to prepare for as an industry because we don't know what's going to happen at any given time, even if you have the highest number of officers there and deployment and everything else. So those are two issues: how people behave and how we're going to respond to it. Those are things that keep me up at night. And they're great to discuss with the students because they're going to be the next generation of venue leaders and event managers. And they don't have any solutions. And I don't have a solution right now, except for maybe more laws and enforcing them.
Yeah, I mean, it really is, John, it's something, I think, again, part of a much broader conversation on sort of, civic behavior, right? And how we carry ourselves and what we allow ourselves to do or not do when we are agitated, irritated, whatever it might be. And we've seen a lot of incidents of, like I said, things being thrown at performers and managers and others that, just beyond being unacceptable generally, it really is dangerous, not just for the individuals being targeted, but for all those around there, right? So, fair points, good thoughts for us to think about, and maybe something to, for leaders to think about and discuss some more. Maybe there's some good recommendations or ideas people want to share back, and feel free to do that. You can reach out to us, and I'll certainly share ideas back with Gil and can connect you if you like as well. So, Gil, thanks for those ideas, and thanks for taking time to sit here and chat with me. I really appreciate hearing from you and getting to know a bit more about you. I've known your name for many years. I had a chance to talk with you, really. So it's nice to finally get to put it all together and hear from you directly. And again, I think we could easily talk for a few hours, but not for today. So thank you for taking the time to join me. Thanks for being a great guest. And thanks for all you're doing for the community there in Florida and around the country. So we appreciate you being here for the second episode of our new podcast series. And thanks to IAVM for this new collaboration, the IAVM podcast series. Really delighted to do it. So Gil, one more time, thank you for joining me today. And to our regular Gay 15 podcast listeners, we hope you're enjoying this new series. It'll be right here each month, along with our other weekly and monthly podcasts, including the Security Sprint, the Nerd Out, and the interview that I mentioned earlier as well. And to our new listeners from the IAVM community, or more broadly, those tied into the commercial facilities sector, thanks for being with us. We're very glad to have you and hope you'll not only stay for the IAVM podcast series each month, but you'll listen, subscribe, and enjoy other Gay 15 podcasts too. They're all available in the same place. We're hearing this interview with Gil today. Until next time, Gil, thank you one more time. And to all those listening, may your venues and organizations be safe, secure, and resilient. Have a great day.
Stay safe, everyone. Thanks.